Welcome back, Honors. All right, so, this is a guess. All right, so, I'm making this before I had y'all today, so this is actually going to be, a super short flip. Couple good stories I got to tell you. Well, one really good story I got to tell you. And then in class, we're going to be talking about, or we did talk about the phases of the French Revolution, the Declaration of the Rights of Man, the Marquis de Lafayette, and his importance in this whole thing. And we're just kind of continually progressing forward, and then we're eventually going to get to a point where we talk about the Industrial Revolution, and then your next test for E period is going to be on Thursday, and for G period, it's going to be on Friday. All right, so now keep your ears peeled for a lot of different announcements and stuff like that coming up, but let's go ahead and get into it, shall we? Now, I'm going to go ahead and cover this up so you can see my face. Anyway, so we left off talking about the night of August the 4th. We left off talking about the storming of the Bastille, right? We talked about, the French Revolution getting very violent. And today in class, we talked about some of the more tame events because we're in what phase? The moderate phase of the French Revolution. The National Assembly phase of the French Revolution. It's going to get real ridiculous before it gets any better, right? Now, ironically enough, some people would say, how is this event that we're about to talk about, the Women's March on Versailles, not a big component of this radical phase that you're talking about? Well, because a lot of it has to do with its causes, right? So the thing about it is by October, people are extremely restless, all right? So you've had a couple of crazy-filled months in the French Revolution already. In July, you had the storming of the Bastille. By August, you had the Declaration of Rights of Man, and you had the night of August 4th. And then now, September kind of came and went, and everybody's kind of calming down. But people are getting very restless because there's still some problems, right? You still have some problems up in the air in France, right? It's not like your revolution's going to be done like that, right? It's also going to not, some of y'all are like, oh, well, how come they didn't fix this all by Tuesday? It's not how revolutions work. You're talking about organizing millions of people. And these millions of people still have some problems. And these problems include a king that has yet to approve or sign the Declaration of the Rights of Man and Citizenry. The Declaration of the Rights of Man and Citizenry. So, that's a big issue, right? You've also got people that are hungry, right? Because, again, yes, bread was released in the very beginning of this, and stores were opened, and prices were forcibly lowered, and people were eating, and it's better, but they're hungry still. And what I mean by hungry in this sense, you can put quotes around it if you want, I mean hungry as in they are physically hungry and tired of eating black bread, and also they're hungry for more. What a lot of people are starting to wonder is, are we going to continue to be fed? Is the bread going to run out? Are we going to end up back where we just started with people starving in the streets and things like that? And not to mention the fact, too, these people are also furious, all right? They're furious for one particular reason. Where is their king in this whole thing? Most of this is going down in the countryside of France, mostly in the northern half of France, all over Paris, right, in the cities and stuff. They're furious because they're like, you know what? We destroyed a prison. Nobles' homes are being burned. We outlawed feudalism. We've done all these things, but we haven't even seen Louis' face, all right? So, why is that? Because where does Louis live? Louis lives in Versailles. Louis lives 10 to 12 miles, depending on what roads you take, outside of Paris, right? Which is a solid several hours walk, which is what most of these people are going to be doing. So, a lot of these people are furious. They're furious because they're like, he's not here. He hasn't had to stand trial for the things that he's done. He hasn't signed our new Constitution yet. And apparently, he's having a party. So something happened. You got to understand is that the press is becoming a wildly important factor. You can put that off in the sidebar somewhere, put a little note somewhere, and you can be like, oh, the press is becoming a big thing right now. And the press is becoming a major factor in all this stuff, right? You've got people that are writing now, and they're directly pointing out the flaws of their government, and they're attacking all the pillars of society. And one very famous one was actually a guy by the name of Jean-Paul Marat, right? Jean-Paul Marat, where's he at? Oh, there he is. Look at Jean-Paul right there, right? Some of y'all are immediately like, oh, he's kind of crusty. All right, so, well, he is kind of crusty. He lived in a sewer for a couple of years, right? So Jean-Paul Marat was a journalist, and he's a specific journalist. Don't get me started on that yet, but we're getting there, right? He's a Jacobin journalist, but we haven't gotten to that whole part yet. But he's a journalist, and he's pretty inflammatory, right? And so he's an example of these journalists that are literally coming up out of the gutters, and they're actually writing all these articles. And one of these articles talked about a party that Louis was having at his house. And all these people are like, wait a minute, you're telling me that our king is having parties when we're destroying stuff and rioting and freaking out and he hasn't signed our parties? All right, so like they're very upset about this whole thing, right? Why'd I hit escape? So what, and apparently in one of these articles, at one of his little get-togethers, he stomped all over one of the tricolor cockades, right? That he took one and he threw it to the ground. He's like, and he was freaking out. And so all these people are like, you're telling me right now that he's destroying stuff that is a symbol of our revolution? So ironically enough, who gets together? But a huge band of angry mothers, right? They're also market women is what they were called because a lot of them worked within the markets of Paris. A lot of them, I like to call them fish moms because like they are very, very angry and they had these knives and a lot of them worked on the docks in like Paris on the river Sieyès and they would actually unload carts of fish all the time, right? So I call them fish moms. So they're also swole. They're working women. They're mad. They're angry. They're like, yeah, my baby ate a piece of bread last night, but I cannot guarantee that he is going to eat one tonight. So I'm furious. And so what they did, organized by a lot of different like people that were much more radical, they got them all together. And they showed them this article. And they were like, he's eating your baby's bread? He's stomping all over our symbols. And so these women said, and they got a huge group of them together with pikes and axes and blades and all these other stuff. And also, oh, I don't know, several cannons and improvised weapons. And they marched 6 hours in the rain to the Palace of Versailles, right? And when they got there, they were like, open up, all right? So they also ran into a whole other group of people on the way there. They like, apparently there was a bunch of women already there, and they were like, Cheryl? Oh, what's up? They're like, and then the like group of them grew and doubled in size. And it's pouring rain on them, and a couple of them were elected, like 6 of them were elected to go talk to the king. And he was like, all right, send me your best 6, right? And so 6 women were elected to go talk to the king. And the king was like, okay, fine. And he tried to turn his charm on and stuff like that. One of them apparently fainted because he was so charming. Which I know some of y'all were like, I thought Louis was awkward. You can probably be pretty charming when you think you might die. All right, so now the thing about it, Louis released a lot of this bread, right? And then, but there were these women still out front of the gates, and she was like, they were like, that's not acceptable. You're still here. You're still here. You're still a 6-hour walk away. And so a bunch of the women that stayed stormed inside the palace, right? They stormed inside the palace, running around, trying to find the king the best they could because they were angry particularly at 2 people. One, they're angry at the king because they believe that Louis is not answering for his crimes. Second of all, these women are also very upset with who do you think? That's exactly right, Katie. They're mad at Marie. They're mad at Marie Antoinette because they feel that as a mother, she should have known better. And she should have been trying to feed the poor children of France. She should have been doing more for them, right? So they're running around the palace trying to find them. 2 guards jump in front of them, and they're like, stop! And then they beat them to death, cut one of their heads off, and put it on a stick and start running through the Palace of Versailles with a severed head on a pike, right? And they try to find him, and then the Marie runs into the king's bedchamber, and they lock the door, and they're banging on the locked door trying to get through it, and they can't get through it, and they're all freaking out. And Louis, the pansy that he is, says, oh, Marie, why don't you just go outside? Why don't you go outside and why don't you talk to all of them, right? Go talk to all of them. Go get them to calm down. And so he sends his wife onto a balcony off the edge of his bedroom. And she brings her children out with her. And she's like, look, I'm a mother too. Look, I'm a mother too. I understand you. I understand what you're saying. And then the people are like, oh, no, you're not. And they start loading their guns, ready to shoot her. And then the Marquis de Lafayette, who did not approve of this march in the first place at all, right, decides, he's like, okay, I have to stop this. And he says, women, rioters, people of France, calm down. And he walks up the stairs. And I know a lot of you are immediately probably like, you never say calm down to a group of women. And you're right. You shouldn't say that. But he walks up the stairs, and he looks at all of them. casts him a charming gaze, and then he bends down and he kisses Marie Antoinette's hand and says, "Long live the Queen." And the entire crowd is like, "Oh, Marquis, he's so handsome." And they all freak out and they all start chanting, "Long live the Queen," right? But they're still not satisfied, because the biggest thing is they force the royal family to return to Paris. Now, why is this so significant, right? A group of angry rioters just stormed into the most secure place in France, assaulted the king himself, demanded what they wanted, and he gave in. And then they force him to return, right? Like, so to Paris, to go to a palace in Paris instead of living 6 hours away, right? This is a major event, right? The king is showing his weakness. Now, there's still one other problem, though. This is a quick event, right? It's not nearly as intense as the Women's March story. Still one other problem, though. They're still broke, all right? So, like, I don't mean the women, but, like, the National Assembly still has no money, right? Like, so, like, because obviously tax money has been being used to pay off loans and stuff like that this entire time. So they decide to go get money from the one place where they believe that has it. So they have this thing known as the Civil Constitution of the Clergy. So this rolls forward in about like June of the next year, where they're trying to figure all this stuff out. And they force, oh, by the way, they force Louis to sign the Declaration of the Rights of Man, and they put him under house arrest in this place called the Tuileries, which we're going to be talking about next. And in the Civil Constitution of the Clergy, they solved the immediate financial crisis that France was under by stripping church lands, stripping the tithe from the church, and then also forcing clergy members to take an oath of allegiance, right? And so that's going to divide the church aggressively, right, and turn them into two types of priests, right? There were the priests that agreed to this, right, and they're called swearing priests, not like they're like, "In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy bleep Spirit," not like that, not swearing like cussing, but swearing as in they agreed to swear this oath and give up their tithes and give up the like lands that the church held onto. And then there were ones called refractory priests, refractory, who refused to take that oath, and they were all arrested and put in prisons, right? So now a lot of people see this as a massive event in the French Revolution, because now the French politicians and the poor are directly reorganizing the Catholic Church, because they believe that they don't want the Catholic Church, who was controlled by the Pope in Italy, to gain too much power and stop their revolution, right? So this is a very, very major event, though. We'll talk about it a little bit more tomorrow, and we'll review it, but the Women's March is a great story, and I absolutely love that one. I'm glad that y'all can kind of ride along and listen to that, but we'll get into it a little bit more tomorrow. Talk to you guys later. Have a good one.